Have you ever witnessed someone completely snap? What happened? There was a kid in school named Davis. There was another kid named Blake. Davis was big, Blake was not. Blake liked to jump on Davis' back, and Davis would always swing him off in a playful way. One day, Blake jumped on Davis' back as usual and latched on. Davis snapped. He screamed blah rah rah as he grabbed Blake by his hands and aggressively flipped him over his head and slammed him onto the pavement. Blake was stunned, and his attempt to stand back up was fruitless as Davis began to repeatedly and ruthlessly kick Blake while he was down. We all just watched. We were in shock. We didn't help. We just watched. Eventually, a teacher stopped the beating. Davis got suspended, and Blake, somehow, ended up being okay. They were friends again the next week. I love happy endings. I had a co-worker get up from her desk, throw her keyboard against the wall, and go sit in the corner and start bawling uncontrollably. The reason? All of the data in her payroll program had been deleted. What actually happened is that she opened the wrong program. Everything was just fine in the correct program. Having done payroll in the past, that response would have been appropriate had she actually lost all that data. Yikes. My dad was in traffic once and he saw a car break down. The guy, wearing a business suit, casually got out of the car, opened the trunk and got an aluminium baseball bat. He then proceeded to beat the living crap out of the car. Windows, lights, the whole work. Once he was finished, he fished out his briefcase from the now ruined car, ripped off the license plate from the car, then casually calmly walked to work. We think this happened in the mid to late 80s, and like a lot of people here, I thought the same thing when I saw the movie with Michael Douglas the first time, although if I recall correctly the character didn't trash his car before leaving, right? I've seen a few snaps. The first one was my ex-roommate had a complete emotional breakdown, where he sat quietly in peculiar places for minutes at a time until he settled on the living room floor and started sobbing. The second one was a different ex-housemate thought he was being spied on, and I came home right after he destroyed the living room. He had flipped the coffee table, breaking all of the dishes. Luckily he missed the TV, punched 2 holes in the windows on the door and threw over one of our plastic rolly shelves. Then later in the night literally ripped his doorknob from his door and replaced it with a deadbolt, refusing to speak to me or my fiancée, and then insisted on having a cop present before saying anything to us. Scariest snap I've ever witnessed, and very creepy because this guy felt he was in danger of what I'm not sure, and there was nothing posing a danger to him, and the fact he felt that way in the house made me think I was in danger, and him not explaining anything made it that much worse. That guy needs help and I hope he found it. Guy, if you're reading this, I hope Florida has been much better to you and your mind is in a better place. Also, I still need your car title to get it out of my fiance's parents' yard. That guy needs help and I hope he found it. That's a sweet sentiment. I hope Florida has been. Oh, that's not going to help. I worked at a Mexican grill years ago. The older quiet dude who always kept to himself but was basically pleasant just lost it one day. He was chopping chicken to put on the line when one of the line employees called out 86 chicken. The guy loses it. I'm already freaking making chicken. He throws the chopping knife sideways at the wall and the tip of it sticks. He pulls it out and throws it again, towards the line, narrowly missing an employee. The knife lands in the barbacoa, splattering juices all over. Then he calmly took off his gloves and apron and left. Having worked in that setting, I understand. This winter I had a layover in Denver airport. Me and every person who flied with Frontier was stuck there for 3 days. I had to switch flights 3 times and to 2 different locations. I had joined a group of people who were also trying to fly back to Southern California, and we were waiting for the last flight to LA. I was supposed to fly into San Diego. An alarm went off with the message, "This is a tornado drill. Please make your way to the tornado shelters downstairs." I then observed a man stand up, start to laugh uncontrollably, collapse onto the floor, still laughing, and had to be carried off for some type of help. I would have done the same, but I had not slept in 3 days and was about 6 shots of vodka, so I was in a marginal coma when it came to reacting. But the man had lost his mind by losing another trip home. Frick Frontier, I may snap if an airline does that to me again. When I worked behind the counter at a gourmet deli in a natural foods grocer, there was a day where this one lady had been served a piece of fish by another employee. I hadn't been a part of this transaction. However, I was the one who helped her when she returned to the counter to complain about the fish. She handed the box back to me, saying, "Hi, I asked for a piece of the halibut from the hot case, and this is a piece of chicken." Not knowing that she was off her freaking rocker, I took her at her word and replied with, "Okay, sure. I'm sorry for the mistake, let me help you out." I took the box that her food was in and prepared to grab her some halibut, but thought maybe I should check the inside of the box just to see what happened. I peek in there and what do I find other than a piece of halibut? At this point, as gently as I can, I tell her, "Mom, I'm happy to grab you another piece of fish, but it's only going to look like the one you've got right here, because this is indeed a piece of..." At this point she cuts me off and starts screaming at me, "Don't tell Emmy that's a piece of fish. If you tell Emmy that's a piece of fish, I am gonna be so mad I'll spit in your face." This lady was old and disheveled looking, so I decided to take her at her word and retreat from the situation as quickly as possible. Grabbed her another piece of fish and told her sweetly that I hoped her day continued to be as wonderful as it had clearly been. Flagged down a manager who followed her around the store to make sure she didn't break steel crap as she proceeded to walk through the store ranting loudly and profanely about how nobody respects her and how she wanted to spit in my face. Seriously, you meet the weirdest freaking people working in a grocery store, especially an upscale hippie one. Should have given her chicken and then hide. I used to work as a private security guard, and one of the most common assignments was working weddings, which was usually a nice change of pace from the usual work sites. So I'm at this wedding and the two Hispanic families are fairly large, and booze is freely flowing. For the most part they were loud, but there wasn't any trouble. The rest of the reception goes off without much issue aside from me observing the crowd, and I see a guy that looked quite discontent at reception. I figured he wasn't too social. I thought it would mostly be uneventful. Well, I was wrong, as when the time came for the best man to give a speech, I saw the guy from earlier come up from his table. He must have been no older than 23 or so, and he looked determined and angry. The bride looks at this guy as she's quite anxious as to what he'll say. This young guy interrupts the best man by taking the mic. He paused for a moment and wipes his eye. I'm thinking, great, another emotional speech by a drunk guest. But alas, nope. It was far better. It turns out the guy is a really close friend of the bride and professes his love for her and that the pregnant bride's child is his. The bride looks mortified and his emotional speech turns from a drunken profession of love to straight up anger and resentment. He then insults the groom and the groom's family. The father of the bride, the groom, and groom's friends are absolutely livid and ready to beat the living heck out of the guy. But I'll have to hand it to the guy, as he was smart and he had brought his friends, and it looked like the dang Royal Rumble as the men are just brawling, chairs are being thrown. The bride is leaving sobbing, her friends and family in tow. It's just sea of people before the other family members and a few my fellow guards could even get there to even attempt to break up the fight. By then the cops were already there. Quite a few people were arrested. The venue was pretty much trashed. TLDR. A close friend of the bride professes his love for her. Big fight ensues, resulting in a ruined wedding and people were arrested. Back in middle school, I remember there was this kid who got bullied, and one day he punched the bully. They both went down and started wailing on each other. The kid got his butt kicked, but he didn't get bullied again after that day. This also works in prison. I was taking care of my nieces and nephews for a few months while their parents sorted out an ugly divorce. All three teenagers. For 2 weeks my niece would get off the bus crying, but didn't want to tell me what was going on. Her brother finally explained that a group of several bullies had been ganging up on them, but especially her since she was younger and smaller. He ended up with some pretty serious bruises standing up for her, but he's a skinny, lanky fellow, so nobody really took him seriously. I called the bus driver and explained that if those kids came home with marks or tears one more time, I was going to be on that bus and we were going to have some serious issues. The very next day, I was standing at the road waiting. As soon as the bus stopped, I heard all heck break loose in the back. My niece had enough, grabbed a much larger, much older guy and put his head through the glass of the rear window. The driver was yelling, I was yelling for her to open the dang door. The kids were all shouting, and my niece had this dude on the floor, beating him in the face with a textbook. I finally got on the bus to find my nephew standing there in shock watching his baby sister beat this guy to a pulp. I bear hugged her, a sight to behold, I'm sure, since she's a good bit taller than me and I was pregnant, and dragged her backwards off the bus. Told my nephew to grab her bag. Told the bus driver that they had my number on file to discuss it later, and told the kid to be very certain who he fricked with from now on. Nothing ever came of it, but you can bet your butt nobody picks on those kids anymore. During a charity event, the manager of a pizza place I used to work at couldn't handle the stress. After being hit with a string of complaints, he finally yelled out in a high-pitched voice, "I hate working here." He proceeded to pound his head on the walk-in door, leaving a few dents behind. He was 23 at the time. They were an hour and didn't like the fact that they had to wait to get a few stitches in their head. Didn't want to hear that the critical patients came first. The guy was pee drunk and punched one of the admitting staff in the face. Wound up being tackled by security, cuffed and put into the psychiatric observation suite overnight, then the police arrested him for assault. Yep. Sounds like this regularly happens in every day in and day out. Had a shuttle driver working for us car dealership. He would go pick up customers after their car was done being serviced. Unfortunately, we call him because there was another pickup while he was on his run, and he flipped his crap. He started screaming unintelligibly, but some of it we definitely understood, like how he was going to run the car off a cliff or into oncoming traffic, and he had a customer in the shuttle van the whole time. Lo and behold, the customer gets here and calmly tells our advisor that our shuttle driver is a disgrace. He was fired soon after and had another minor freakout. I've since heard that he works at another local dealership as a shuttle driver. I'm not the type of person to try to get somebody fired, but if you threaten to commit suicide while driving me around, I think I'm going to need you fired. The last time I snapped was the summer of 4th grade. A girl who had tormented me all summer verbally, convinced all the kids to not talk to me, threw my books in the mud, and so on, accidentally beamed me in the head with one of those giant rubber balls. Hurt like heck. I was a small kid, and it actually took me to the ground. We both knew she'd get away with it. Nobody else was around. I'm never gonna forget the smile on her face. Next thing I knew, I had my hands on her neck. Extra context. The next day, I got called into the front office. Her mom gave some sob story about how her daughter wouldn't even touch her dinner, was super quiet all afternoon. She's such a happy girl. She's never like this. The girl was suspiciously silent. The heck could she say? So the lady in charge told me to explain what happened. So I, this little 10-year-old, went over and said, "We had a fight. I said something mean. I'm so sorry, tears and everything. It was crazy." The kid is stunned. Her mom and the teacher all jump me. "Oh, it's okay, sweetheart. You apologized. You're such a nice little girl. You didn't mean it." I didn't rat her out for the bullying, but she never came near me again. Freaking schools, man. I can't recall my exact age when this happened. Maybe around 6-8 years old. My younger, over a year younger, sister and I were in the living room, watching TV. My sister was sitting on the floor and I was sitting on the couch. Out of the blue, our mother walks into the room carrying 2 heaping plates of spinach. Nothing else, just spinach. She lays the plates in front of us. Sister complained that she didn't want any spinach. That's all it took to trigger my mother's inner psychotic. At that, she pounced on sister, grabbed a fistful of sister's hair at the back of her head, pulled her head back, and with the other hand started scooping up the spinach with her fingers and slamming the spinach into sister's mouth while screaming at the top of her lungs. "Eat it. Eat it. I made IT, now you're going to eat it." My poor sister. 1 minute she's watching TV, peacefully minding her own business. The next minute she's got this screaming, raving lunatic directly on top of her, physically assaulting her, literally trying to shove spinach down her throat. I worked in this rehab halfway house a few years ago, and this one kid would repeatedly steal other residents' money. I basically caught him in the act and confronted him, and he absolutely flipped. He took out his wallet, ripped up all the money and threw it into my face. Something changed in that moment and his face was just pure rage. I noped out of there real quick and he chased me down the stairs and then outside where he proceeded to scream at the top of his lungs. Not saying anything, just screaming. He eventually walked off and didn't see him for hours. The next day his counselor asked me what happened and I told her. Then she proceeds to tell me, "Poor kid, he's just nervous about his court case today." Me, "What's the charge?" Counselor, "Assault with a deadly weapon. Thanks for the heads up. 2/10 job would not do again." His drug of choice was spice, synthetic herb. I've seen people come in on everything, but I gotta say that stuff will mess people up permanently. I had a job in a place like that for a while. When I took the job they kept telling me that I would be in charge of the house in 6 months if I made it and I didn't understand why. I lasted about a month. My best friend and I have been best friends since we were 4 or 5. We are the closest you can get to being brothers without being blood related. We lived together in an apartment with his sister and his girlfriend. One day last year we were just me and him at home and he was trying to read up for an exam the day after. He was getting more and more stressed and I was asking him what I could do to help. His requests were getting weirder and weirder. At one point he said it would help him study if we cleaned and reorganized the kitchen. He started getting frantic and walking around the whole flat flipping light switches on and off and stuff like that. Started staring out the windows. I thought he was just stressing big time. But then he started talking about the whole country and the government being after him. That's when I realized there was obviously something wrong. And it just got worse and worse. I called his mum and girlfriend and they showed up within a half hour. We called the hospital and he ended up being committed in a closed ward for about 2 weeks. It's the single most frightening thing I've ever experienced. The way his eyes slowly changed from the guy I know, but really stressed, to this completely different person. Scared and distrusting. He thought we were all out to get him. The scariest thing was that we didn't know if we would get him back. I visited him every day while he was there. Summer camp one year. There was this friendly, good-looking guy who, it turns out, had been getting bullied by this short, scrawny kid. None of us realized it was going on because it never occurred to us that a short scrawny kid could bully a friendly, handsome fellow. It was bad too. He would apparently punch him in the shoulder when no one was looking, stole his lunch more than once, threw his $100 sunglasses into a clogged, disgusting toilet, just all kinds of stuff. This went on for 2 weeks and the guy just took it, never said anything. The very last day of camp, we're sitting at lunch and the bully happens to be sitting across the bullied. The bully wasn't even looking at or talking to the bullied kid, just sitting there eating his lunch, when out of nowhere the friendly kid leaps across the table and just starts pummeling the scrawny bully. He just beats the tar out of him before a few others could pull him off. It was only after that all the stuff came out. One person said, I saw the scrawny kid punch him once but didn't think it was a big deal. Then someone else chimed in, I saw the same thing the other day. Before you know it, half the camp is sharing stories of little cruelties they witnessed. When I was 19 I lived in a house with my then boyfriend, his friend Darren and his girlfriend Meg, and this other guy Steve, who was older, probably mid-20s, who also had a long-term girlfriend that stayed over most of the time but didn't technically live there. A little background. This was not the ideal living arrangement. It was on the border of a not so great area. The conditions of the house were pretty grody, and there was a fair amount of drug use that happened there. Also should mention that Steve and his girlfriend fought a lot, some fights turning somewhat violent. On the eve of Thanksgiving, Steve came home late at night and was in the middle of a phone call with his girlfriend, who presumably was trying to break up with him. There was lots of screaming that turned into sobbing that turned into begging. He locked himself in the bathroom and let out the most blood-curdling scream, screaming and smashing and sobbing. Darren tried to talk to him through the door but he wouldn't have it. He continuously said things about how he wanted to die, how he was going to go to her house and kill himself in front of her. At this point someone had called his dad, the two were close, and asked him to come over to help because we didn't know how to handle the situation. There's a super loud crashing sound, like glass breaking. Steve busted the bathroom door open and ran past Darren, blood dripping down his face, bolted out the door and into the street with no shoes on, in the snow, screaming first car I see as if he's going to jump in front of it. We look in the bathroom and it's completely torn apart. The mirror is cracked from him punching it, there's blood in the sink and on the floor, everything is thrown about, and the back of the toilet is completely cracked in half. He broke the toilet with his face. Witnessing this was terrifying. Watching the complete breakdown of a grown man, especially when I was still relatively young and had never seen anything like this before in my life. Darren went outside and tried to find where he went, but he was long gone. His dad eventually found him sitting on his ex-girlfriend's front porch, in the cold, in the snow and the dark, just sitting there, not moving. He had run all the way there. It wasn't very close. She wasn't home, which was probably a very good thing. TLDR, my roommate's girlfriend broke up with him and he locked himself in the bathroom, had a complete mental breakdown, and broke the toilet with his face. Out at a bar when some guy grabbed the butt of a married woman. She didn't say anything, just looked across the bar at her husband, a man about 6 feet 8 inches, at least 280 pounds of pure muscle, like ridiculously big. How the butt grabber remained conscious for the savage beating he received before 5 or 6 people pulled them apart was actually surprising. He landed maybe one hit before he got sent through a table. LOL, I like how the wife communicates everything with one look. Come here, Bane. It happened again. Beating ensues. Sitting at the airport in Las Vegas heading home at one of the restaurants, this lady took her plate of breakfast and threw it at this guy's face across the table. Hit him right square in the face. And then she stormed off to the gate, which was like 50 feet away. Guy cleans himself off like nothing happened. Walked over to her and she just dropped his boarding pass on the ground. Don't know what caused this, but it was pretty entertaining. He wanted the window seat. My mom has snapped on multiple occasions. By snapped I mean we have had to put her in a mental health facility. The first one I remember was after my grandfather died. She was fine up until a day before the funeral. She was writing weird and creepy things that made no sense. When she spoke, nothing made sense. At one point we agreed that my cousins, who were 3 and 6 at the time, didn't need to see him in a casket, so that wasn't their last memory of him. My mother comes out and she grabs onto them and starts trying to take them into the room with the casket. I had to grab my mother's arm and rip it off of them and dang near yell no at her to finally get her to stop. It was the first moment when I could really tell something was wrong. During the funeral service, she acted like a small child who just wants to go home, stomping her foot when somebody took too long or saying hurry up. My uncle looked her in the eye and had to tell her to stop. It was really bad and hard to watch. When we finally got home, my dad put her to bed and she just sat there upright staring at the wall. The next morning my dad had to take her to the mental hospital because she just started throwing random things and was very unresponsive. The worst part is it was on my younger brother's birthday. My mom is a recovering alcoholic, but my dad didn't really support her in the beginning. When she was off the juice for a few months and seemed stable, he let her drink a bit again to the annoyance of me and my siblings. So I'm home one weekend from college and my aunt invites my mom and me out to dinner. As we're driving, my aunt tells me that we're actually going to the casino. I'm peeved because the casino is not a good place for my mother, but I tag along. Mom and aunt split their ways to play their choice of machines and I follow my mom. She gets one drink, then another, no more. I tell mom when her glass is empty, but she gets another, then one more. She won't let me drag her out. My aunt finds us and is absolutely peeved that my mom is off her butt drunk. I am peeved at mom and my aunt. My mom starts blubbering that we can't tell my dad, but my aunt still tells her we have to. As we ride home, my mom is sobbing uncontrollably and drunkenly throwing insults at me and my aunt. She has never, ever said, "I hate your freaking guts" to me in my entire life. And it's not something I would ever expect to hear her say, but she said it to me several times. I was breaking down. She starts going, "I want to kill myself. I want to kill myself." My aunt instead drives us to the emergency room. I call my dad and he comes up. He's P and I'm P. My mom is put under observation and sedated because she's going absolutely nuts. She calms down, but gets carted from the psych ward to the recovery ward for the next couple of days. It was a nightmare. I never seen my mother like that. Following that was her confessing to a gambling problem and eventually revealing her compulsive lying. Although her behavior is several decades in the making, it all came to a head and manifested into a person I didn't recognize. That episode marked a time in my life where I realized I didn't really know my mom. However, the episode led to my dad realizing she is seriously ill. I used to occasionally visit my parents' friends who live in Vermont during the summer. Key phrase there being used too. The summer of my 16th or 15th birthday, my cousin from Austria was visiting my dad, who's Austrian, because his mother thought that it would be good for him to go see the world, and his family that lives in America. Cool. We all took a road trip to the mountains of Vermont and were having a pretty fine time until dinner one evening. After we had finished eating, my dad and his friends were chatting around a table outside, while my cousin and I were sitting next to a little fire that was prepared, so we could all stay warm. Mind you, the husband of the couple we were staying with set up this fire about 5 feet from a massive wood pile he had stocked for winter, like a moron. My cousin and I were getting cold, so we added a couple logs onto the fire and were sitting happily, chatting in broken English and animated gesticulations when out of freaking nowhere, this long ponytailed freaking hippie, my dad's friend, charges up to us and unleashes holy heck. He's screaming at the top of his lungs about how dangerous the fire is, and calling us morons for adding wood to it. His only gear shift was to stop yelling about what we did, and start asking us rhetorical questions like, would you like it if I just set fire to your car, or burned all of your crap down? Needless to say, my cousin and I were freaking stunned. We had no idea why he suddenly blew up at us at all. Later that evening, after my dad took his turn losing his crap at his now ex-friend for screaming at us like that, once the shitstorm had subsided, my dad took the time to explain to us that when his two friends were very young, they had apparently hosted a party in their parents' house while they were out of town and accidentally burned it to the ground. TLDR. My dad's friend lost his crap at my cousin and I while we sitting at a fire because he thought it was too big, and reminded him of the time he burned his parents' house down. At university, approaching exam time, girl in the library snapped under the pressure, picks up a chair, pretty heavy, slams it on the desk several times, shouts I just don't have any outlet for my emotions and bursts into tears. Sounds like she found an outlet. Back when I was in secondary school, we had this Thai exchange student. He's this small scrawny kid that didn't speak too great English and being from a different country and all pretty much kept to himself. I decided to befriend him and we got along pretty well as you could when you can't really communicate too well. Enter the douchebag. Douchebag was about 2 years older than us, and pretty much a bully. He also loved to pick on said Thai boy because he was different and because douchebag thought he was the crap. Anyway, douchebag would pick on Thai boy and send him home with scrapes and bruises etc. Typical bully behavior. One day though, douchebag and his posse confronts me and Thai boy as we were leaving the school, challenges Thai boy to a fight and got his posse to basically beat the crap out of me. Thai boy is being pushed around by douchebag and basically being pounded on. Thai boy is visibly distraught and keeps going no fight no fight. Then douchebag spits in his face. Now we see karmic justice in all its beauty. Thai boy's face completely changes. He grabs douchebag by his shoulders, pins him to the chain link fence with his body and proceeds to knee and kick the living crap out of him. Douchebag can be seen trying to escape but Thai boy seems to have more strength than his small frame suggests. Douchebag finally collapses clutching his abdomen and literally pleading for Thai boy to stop. Never bothered Thai boy again. When I asked Thai boy why he would wait so long to fight back, Thai boy says something like, back in Thailand, I fight every day. I'm Muay Thai from 4-year-old. Pain is nothing, but he spit on my face. Face important. Spit on face unforgivable. Apparently he was a junior Muay Thai champion before he moved to my country. Holy crap. As soon as I saw he was Thai I knew the guy was fricked. I was in line at the grocery store and the woman in front of me was obviously unnerved. She was on the verge of tears and shaking slightly. When it was her turn to check out, the clerk put her first item in a plastic bag and the woman snapped. She began screaming, those bags kill cats. Those bags kill cats. It's a big store, maybe 20 checkout lines, and the whole place turned to look. The woman then went to the front of the store, still yelling about cats, and began pulling the 5-gallon water bottles out of the racks. It lasted until several people calmed her down. She sat on the floor and had her head down weeping when I left the store. It was me that snapped. I was 16 years old and had just moved from New York to California. My family had no money and we'd had to leave my dog behind. About 2 weeks after I moved, I received word that my beloved dog had been put to sleep by the kennel we'd left her with. I was devastated. That day, a kid made the mistake of making fun of me for being poor. I snapped. I'm not that violent, and back then I wasn't that big. The rage took over. I beat the crap out of that poor kid, screaming wordlessly the entire time. On the plus side, no one at my new school ever messed with me again. I'm sorry about your dog. Losing a best friend in that manner has to be extremely difficult. High school. This kid was overweight and just fit the nerd persona. He had greasy hair. He hung out with other kids at breakfast, lunch, and discussed anime and video games in the early 2000s. He fixed people's computers for fun. Played chess after school if he wasn't helping the librarians run the library. But of a lot of bad jokes from people. He took it pretty stoically until someone one day slapped him while insulting him. It was like watching every bad thing this poor kid had endured come pouring out of the floodgates. He let out a loud, wordless scream and flung himself onto the other guy. Being that the other guy was a few inches shorter and half his weight, it was a given they were going down. Then the fat kid just began kneeing the other one in the groin while slamming his head into the floor. Teachers had to come and pull him off the other kid. Then it took 3 of them to restrain him because he kept trying to jump back on the bully. He got suspended for a week. Other kid got 2 weeks for starting it. When he came back, it was pretty rare for someone to outright insult him after that. He was just smiles and laughter with his friends, though. Glad to see a school actually punish the instigator for once. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.